Hello. Officially, I'm on unmute. Can everybody hear me at the back? Can everybody hear me outside? It's like playing Wembley Stadium. Hi. How are you doing? Well, thank you for coming to join me. Sorry you've had to be very patient and wait for the start of my talk. My name is Tony Pringle, and I'm the managing director of a company called Bureau van Dijk here in the UK. It was such a miserable day this morning, I thought we'd start with slightly happier, sunnier memories. The last time I was at Earl's Court was the middle of the summer. I was lucky enough to get some tickets to the Olympic Games and come and see the volleyball matches that were taking place just next door. And because it was so grey and miserable, at least I thought, well, my picture's got a nice blue sky. It could cheer us up before I start talking about the serious business of data. On that day, just for your interest, I watched Japan women play Korea's women in the bronze medal match, and I have to say, whilst I don't claim to be as exciting as watching a 6'6" Japanese lady smashing a volleyball into the face of a equally tall 6'6" Korean lady, I hope I can keep you engaged for the next half an hour and that you'll make it through. For those of you who are interested in the scoreline of the bronze medal match, Japan actually beat Korea 3-0, and it was very entertaining stuff. The purpose of my talk today is really to get on and discuss with you the business of how companies are using data successfully to drive their marketing strategies. At this point, I usually abuse my position as MD and go on about the old days. Having been in the business of information for approaching 20 years, I have a bit of history here. But I understand that a number of my managers who recently went on a course to talk about how to do presentations properly said, in the age of internet technology and cloud-based solutions, no one really wants to hear your stories about CD-ROM databases, and I should just cut to the chase, which is a bit sad for me, but I couldn't let it go quite that simply. Emma, for me, is a very poignant picture. Emma is a CD-ROM of UK companies that was made in the early 90s, and Emma is actually an acronym that stands for Easy Mailing and Marketing Applications. And I think it just highlights the fact that as a business, what we've always tried to do in this field is bring data into an area where business can use it effectively within their marketing strategies, even since the early 90s. So how are companies achieving that now? Effectively, we all have lots of challenges to face, and the main difference between where we are now and the days when Emma was brand spanking new and no one had the internet is, of course, technology. Today, it's so much simpler and easier to get access to good quality, high-value data and bring that into the areas in which we work on a day-to-day basis. Nothing really is standalone anymore. What we see is people using technology to bring internal and external data together through the use of the internet and cloud-based technologies to drive successful marketing strategies. So, when we talk about using data in the world of marketing, of course it touches many different aspects, and I apologize if they're a little bit too small for those of you at the back. But successful businesses are really using data to sort out a number of issues in their business, enrich the knowledge that they have about the place in which they work, and take their businesses forward. So unless you actually are brand new to the world of work, or you've just started your business yesterday and know nobody, you'll already be managing a data legacy. And a data legacy can be a real pain. A lot of the information you have can be out of date, stale, inaccurate, or just not rich enough to really help you with effective decision making. So the issue is with that, not just that it prevents good decision making, is that you can waste a lot of time messing around with data that isn't really helpful and takes people away from what they should be doing on a day-to-day basis. So at the outset, when we talk to people about dealing with data effectively within the world of marketing, we quite often start with a conversation about this legacy and what people are having to work with from a starting point. And this starts really in an area which isn't as glamorous as we would like it to be, because it starts with sorting out all of these initial data issues. Things like duplications of records, things like having data that is for companies that have ceased to trade, addresses that are out of date, or really, again, just lacking in quality. Now, this all sounds very painful to deal with, but actually recognizing this issue and starting to deal with this problem is the first step to actually implementing a really effective data strategy. Now, if we talk about duplicates, I think we all may recognize this guy. I mean, we've all bought lists in the past, or someone in the business has bought lists and loaded into our systems information, and sometimes maybe those records already exist. That company was already there, but nobody took the time to check. For me, probably the story that rings the truest, with the one we see the most and hear the most about, is the enterprising sales guy who thinks he's got a fantastic opportunity, goes to the CRM to go and input the data about the new company that no one's ever thought about before. And unfortunately for him, he finds, of course, that the data's already there. And in fact, someone in the business is already dealing with that company. But he thinks, I have a genius idea. Instead of just maybe talking to that person and allowing them to get on with their jobs, instead of just having another contact under ABCD Limited, which is the original in their system, he'll go and type in ABCD Ltd, which allows him to create another record. And I think whether it's this or something similar, we see it over and over again with lots of the organizations we work with. And as I say, I mean, this isn't exciting stuff. And the way, of course, people deal with this is fairly straightforward. We see a lot of companies take their data and run deduplication exercises all the time, and quite often they just use their own data. They take it, they run it against itself and look for matches, and that's quite neat, and it can do a nice job on a one-off basis. But the issue you've got is you've only cured it at a point in time. It's not ongoing, and it doesn't enable you to maintain your database going forward. So a better solution for dealing with the duplicates is to run your data against externally managed content. If you run that duplication exercise against an external data provider who's managing an exhaustive amount of company information, you're able to create a link between your information and the information of that third party. And the value for this is not just obviously in terms of being able to identify where 2 or 3 or 4 of your records are connected to the same actual entity on that third party's database, but the real benefit comes when you start to use the other information that the third party is managing on your behalf to, through that link, to populate and bring information into the workflow and databases in which you work on a day-to-day basis. And the nice thing about this, of course, is it's just not a one-off solution, but it's a solution that continues to prevent the inclusion of duplications. If we just take a brief example, and I'm sorry again if it's not particularly clear, and we have a nice link up with Salesforce. Someone trying to add Tesco PLC into a Salesforce application that already has Tesco PLC in as an account, just to highlight this, will put in the name through the third-party provider's system, and then when they go to the account in Salesforce, they will get an icon which says, actually, mate, you can't put this in because this is already an account and you're going to be creating a duplication, and they physically can't do it. And it's not just Salesforce, although I pick on Salesforce a little bit because it's the one we have the prettiest pictures for, that allows you to do this. But once that unique identifier is embedded in your system and connected to the third party, you can make sure that you're not going to bring additional duplicate records into your databases in the future. And this is just really the sort of primary level of care for data. But now you've got that connection, you can really start to take advantage of all the other information that will be made available to you. You really are opening a gateway to this third party's managed content. And so these initial sorting out or cleaning up of data issues can be easily dealt with. A lot of providers, and we're no different to a number of other businesses, take a lot of data from areas like Companies House, the London and Edinburgh Gazettes, and just enables us on a daily basis to identify when companies, for example, have ceased to trade. It never ceases to amaze me how many companies are still being marketed to that are actually dead, for want of a better term. And unfortunately, in this day and age, it's an ever-increasing number of companies that we're trying to find out if they are still trading. And because we have that information in our databases, and as you can see here, just in the header, we've picked on a company that's in liquidation, that company can be removed, archived, or we can go to the account manager of that business and alert them to the fact that maybe they should be paying attention to this particular issue. And then cleaning up data, obviously what you'll have sometimes is a contrast between the information you have in your database and the information that someone else is maintaining in their database. I always sort of talk about this slightly with a word of warning, because I shouldn't always claim that third-party providers have the best data. If your salesperson's just come back from a meeting and he's just written down the address of where he's been, the phone number and the name of the person, it isn't always true to say that using a company with externally managed data is going to improve on that. So the best thing you can do is make sure that there is a mechanism in place which at least asks you the question whether or not you are going to overwrite data. It's not complicated if the company's dead. There's no decision-making process there. But if the address information you have is contrary to someone else's, or the contact information, what you should really be looking for is a system which says, okay, do you actually want to use this or not? Otherwise, you do run the risk of losing a lot of valuable content that you already have. So now you've made this link to this externally managed content, you can really start to leverage the value of the information that is being held. And you know, there are lots of different places to look for information. The primary source here in the UK, and where a lot of companies like ourselves will go, as I say, is Companies House, but you will get a lot of primary and secondary research involved as well. And marketeers initially want to use that information to really start to learn about the companies that they're working with and the markets that they work within. I think on an individual company basis, this is quite simply done. Quite often within CRMs, there are fields, there are spaces there to be populated, whether it's the turnover of a company, what the companies do, who owns the companies. These can all be filled by the information that's being managed outside of your environment. And for individual companies, this, you know, can be extremely valuable for a salesperson who has a phone call to make. My big thing for my salespeople is whenever you pick up the phone, make sure you've got something intelligent to say. And so by putting more information in the hands of those salespeople, a better description of what the company does that they're speaking to, a better indication of the size or the success of that business, makes sure that when they pick up the phone, they're actually going to say something intelligent. For individual companies, one of the probably most popular things that people want to access is a view of any corporate groups that they may be involved with. We do work with companies where we've seen they actually are selling to more than one business in a corporate group and they don't even recognize it. And that may help them to consolidate their efforts and improve their approach. But most often salespeople quite like this because when they have access to information like this, they can identify if they're working with a company down here that maybe they should also be having conversations to other businesses across the group for cross-selling opportunities which are easily identifiable and where those references are easy to find. For marketeers, though, the value really comes when you start to look at larger volumes of data. Having gone through the matching exercise and linked your information, you can load your valuable client information or your best prospect data into external resources and create things like segmentation. I don't think we've met too many companies in this space who don't want to understand their clients better. And this is a very simple example where someone's got a group of companies that they're particularly interested, that they've worked with, and they want to understand where they sell. So they simply load their data into the database and they break it down. In this case, we've done it by industry and revenue. And what it will do is it will highlight areas of the market where potentially the companies are very strong, and they want to use that information to find more companies like those that they already sell to. Or they'll look and find gaps which surprise them, and they'll see that, in fact, we don't sell enough to construction companies in Bristol over £50 million, and I'm really surprised about that, and we need to go and find some. And it's this kind of intelligence that can really start to drive a business forward. And I never did a presentation without using a pie chart, so this is just me being indulgent. But the same information obviously can be produced for reports and to really help people understand the status of where your businesses are. So what do we mean when we talk about driving businesses forward? That last piece, you know, sort of touched on the idea that through improved intelligence, we can improve our targeting because we have a better understanding of where we're selling. And people can take this to lots of different levels. I mean, we see people not just using financial data, although if they do use financial data, it can make marketeers very popular with salespeople, because salespeople like the idea that they're being told to speak to companies that are large enough or profitable enough to actually buy the products that they're trying to sell. But we also see people using some of the data that we manage to make themselves popular with the finance department, a very rare thing. but actually by picking companies who are creditworthy and solvent. So not only can they buy the products that you're trying to sell, but they can actually pay for them as well. And there are lots of tiers to this. I mean, other really popular examples would include things like the companies that we work with that have an international presence. They want to identify businesses where potentially there's overseas revenue. They want to identify businesses who have subsidiaries or holding companies overseas, because they know that that will be more likely a good starting point for them. And the final point in terms of what I think really helps marketeers to drive businesses forward from a prospecting perspective is really now the ability they have with these third-party databases to monitor the marketplace. A good example would be picking companies to target at March, because that's when their financial year end is, and budgets are usually set around financial year ends, and you want to talk to them when their budgets are new, when their budgets are about to be decided. And timing, as we know, is so often everything in the sales process. And monitoring just adds another tier to that, because setting up monitoring around key events for a company, and the ones we see most frequently are things like changes in the directors of a business, changes in the ownership of a business, or a company filing new accounts, which indicates rapid growth. Identifying companies at the points when that data becomes available becomes critical from a marketing and a sales perspective, because the marketeer or the salesperson who has to make an approach wants to get their timing right. Too often it's not the right time. And by setting up these kind of alerts, you can actually direct lots of pushed information of great value to people at the right time. And that can be to the marketing team, or it could be told or sent out to individual salespeople within the organization itself. So I've talked a lot about generating leads and how marketeers, through linking information, are able to better target the marketplace, find the right time to contact people. But for a lot of the marketers we work with, this is actually, whilst maybe not the most exciting, the most valuable piece of the puzzle for them. And it really comes to helping people effectively deal with the leads they get from all their improved marketing activities. I know from my experience, in our sales team, we have splits geographically, we have splits by industry, we have splits by size, and making sure when companies come to us, either through our own efforts or because they got a lovely reference from one of our clients, that it's so important that that lead gets to the right person quickly to make sure that we don't miss out on any opportunities. And being able to profile those companies as they come back to us is extremely valuable. And the marketers in our company obviously have access to a lot of that information, so they can quickly understand who needs to see that information and when. They also use it to prioritize. So if in a company they're doing larger campaigns through either direct mail or email marketing, what they'll do is sometimes they'll contact many more companies than their sales teams will ever dream of being able to call up and follow up on their behalf. But they'll use the information to prioritize the order in which the salespeople are asked to follow up that campaign, putting the companies that look most like their clients at the top, that are of the right size, in the right industry, and in the right place, and leaving those that are the least likely to the bottom. And again, everything a business can do to improve the effectiveness of that campaign is very, very welcome. So, in summary, and I'm being very quick today, I have to say we'll have plenty of time for questions. I think what we find even now is that too often businesses are working with poor quality data. Data that's probably either too old or inaccurate, or certainly not rich enough to help them in the decision-making process. What we see is that successful marketeers have learned that integrating external content into the way that they work and into their CRMs has been able to enable them to develop really successful marketing strategies. And it's not a short-term solution, a one-off. It's a solution that continues to give on an ongoing basis. These companies have a better insight, and they're able to bring more and better qualified targets into their businesses. And they found that, in fact, it's actually quite a simple thing to affect. It's certainly much more easily attainable today than it was back in the days of lovely old Emma in the 90s. And it's making them much more effective and more popular with everyone in their business because they're able to bring more sales in. And at the end of the day, it's sales that are so valuable to everyone's businesses. So, much like the Japanese volleyball team, I ran through Korea rather quickly, 3-0, and touched on lots of points there. I want to I know it's a funny environment and a bit noisy to be asking questions, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take some now. I know there is a microphone. If there are no questions, we are here, and I will be here for a period of time. And for those of you who want to go into a little bit more detail about the ways in which people are using the information that I've talked about and how they go about starting those integration projects, I'd be very happy to see you over at our stand, roughly over there. Thank you very much for your time.